All right, so we back with part 2 of the interview of my story. And remember, drop down in the comments, leave comments if there's anything you would like me to touch on a little bit more. I noticed on the last video there were some comments in regards to me, like in regards to certain types of stuff I experienced as a child. Physical abuse. There was people that asked if I was sexually abused or anything like that. Thank God I never experienced any type of that, sexual abuse, anything like that. I was physically abused, emotionally abused, mentally abused, stuff like that, when I was young by my father. My mom, back in the day, everybody used to get an ass whipping, so, yeah, everybody got an ass whipping. But my dad, it was different with him. He would hit me, to the point where other family members would have to intervene, where I'd have marks on me, where I couldn't go to school because I had marks on me, stuff like that. He would, it was a difference. His type of abuse and normal discipline. And he did a lot of degrading stuff too, because when I was young, I used to not like to go home because my house was so filled with chaos. So a lot of times I'll stay out, as a kid does, playing, and don't come home till a little late and stuff like that. And so there was times where I don't know why the fuck I used to do it, but when I got older, it was broken down to me, and they said that I didn't like to go home because of chaos. So I would use the bathroom on my pants when I was a kid. You know what I mean? And my father, that shit he didn't like that shit. So, and this was probably up to 2nd, 3rd grade. So anytime that would occur, that was grounds for him to beat my ass. And then it got to the point where I remember one time I did it, and he put my underwears in my face. And my mom and him started fighting instantly. My mom was like, my mom, every time that used to happen, my mom used to be like, yo, you have to clean your underwear. You know what I mean? That was like my punishment for doing that. So when one time I was doing that, my dad got upset, and he took the underwears and put it in my face, and my mom hit him right away. As soon as that happened, my mom went off on him. And then they started fighting, and then, it was a bad situation. So, yeah, and I think that's why to this day, I haven't put my hands on my kids. I smacked Major's hand, and Maritza, probably when she was younger, I smacked her hand, and my other son.
Sorry,
but
I couldn't hear what you said.
That's all. I won't put my hands on them. I'll leave that up to my wife. For me, my discipline is my voice. They know when I'm playing around, and I joke around with my kids a lot. We have super good relationship. I joke around with them. They joke around with me. But they know when it's business time, it's business time. And that stuff gets turned off real quick. And that's part of it. So and that stuff used to be embarrassing. When I was in school, I'll use the bathroom on myself, or when I was outside playing, I used to use the bathroom on myself, and that stuff, for a kid, that was embarrassing. But I didn't know until I got older and started speaking with a psych, and they was like, look, a lot of times kids do that when they don't want to go home, because it's your natural instinct. As soon as you feel you got to go to the bathroom, to find the bathroom. They said kids that are physically abused, that there's a lot of chaos in their home, they tend to do that because they don't want to go home. And that's the way it was. I just didn't want to go home. I didn't want to be around that. And my father, he left very early on in my life, probably, I don't know, 3rd, 4th grade, something like that. And he would come around every once in a while. And I remember when he would come around, he had nice cars and stuff because he was in the streets. So I remember him and his buddies used to come around. It used to be like 3 or 4 of them, and they'd all have nice cars, and he'd pick me up and be like, come on, let's go for a drive. And I remember thinking it was real cool because music would be loud, nice cars, nice fancy cars, a lot of jewelry. I'd go with my dad. He'd let me put on his chain, stuff like that. But for him, it wasn't parenting, and he wasn't like I don't believe it was like spending time with me. I think it was more like showing me off. Like, I have a son, and I didn't realize that until I got a lot older. And you see parents do that they want to look good for certain people, so they be like, yeah, this is my son, stuff like that. But I specifically remember my dad used to take me to sell drugs with him. He would always tell me, yo, look out the window. And it'd be at night, so I look in the window, but I could see the reflection right back, what was going on, and things like that. That's what it was at those early years. And like I said in the last video, that led to me, I was in 5th grade, was the first time that I, like 5th grade, middle school, high school, I had fights with my teachers. 5th grade teacher, I had a fight with. I mean, you can't even call it a fight because it's a 5th grader against a grown man. There's nothing you can do as a 5th grader, but I had extreme problems with authority, especially male figure authority. Females I was better with. Let's go. Yeah, yep. I remember I had to stay after school. I did something, and he was saying something to me, and I think he tried to grab me or something. I don't remember. And I try to hit him. Like a 5th grade, you can't do nothing. He just grab you and toss you around or whatever, and that's it. But and it also led to me not going to school a lot. I remember probably 4th grade, I would miss literally probably 2 to 3 days a week of school. That's a big deal. Now that shit can't happen. Back then, I used to miss it all the time. And I remember my mom, she didn't know. About? Young, I'm telling you.
4th grade, you just said?
3rd, 4th grade. I was young because my mom was in nursing school, so she used to leave early in the morning. Nintendo had first came out, I remember, because my grandmother bought me a Nintendo. So I used to leave, and I used to double back when Shireen would leave, when my older sister would leave. I used to go to the bus stop and then sneak off from the bus stop and go back home, leave the back door open.
Your dad wasn't in the picture then?
No, he wasn't in the picture. No, he would just come around every once in a while.
In the acres and shit?
Yep, lived in the acres, and yep, I used to sneak in the back door, stay upstairs and play video games and just try to be quiet so the neighbors wouldn't hear me. But then at the end of the year, and I used to get the notes from school. They used to, at that time, they used to just send notes home. I used to get the notes from school and throw them away because that's how they used to do it. Yeah. But my mom wouldn't be home. I'd be home when the notes would come. So I'd throw the notes away. Then at the end of the year, I get my report card, and they wanted to hold me back because I missed so much school. And then my mom had to go to school literally crying and was like, yo, if you hold this kid back, his father will kill him. You know what I mean? Like, literally, you're going to have blood on your hands. You know what I mean? Not like his father. She told her, I remember her crying and was like, you're going to have blood on your hands. And, in school, I got good grades when I applied myself.
You test out or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I got good grades when I applied myself, but I didn't really apply myself.
It's hard to do when fucking the household is all fucking
exactly where there's chaos, so.
There's that structure and whatnot.
Yep.
So when you think fucking you started really having a problem in school that you couldn't really do that every day? Because middle school, 4th and 5th grade is when I came around.
Yeah.
Everything was all right.
Yeah.
6th, 7th, 8th grade. I remember 6th grade, I never got in trouble. And 7th grade is when everything kind of started. Joey and Carlos came around.
Yeah.
Where it was kind of a little bit more grown. We all thought we were grown up.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
I think.
Talk about that transition.
Yeah.
From 5th grade to middle school.
Yeah. I think my 6th grade year was fun for me. I remember it was really fun because, mind you, my sister's father was in the picture, so home life was good. He respected my mom. They used to argue and stuff, but it was good. I have no complaints about that. And I used to think he was so strict and a dickhead, but he was just being a parent. He was just being a father. And he had a good job, so it was the first time in our life where we had good Christmases. I remember we'd have Christmas presents under the tree. We had food. We moved out of in the acres where I grew up at. Those were like housing projects. We moved out of there. We moved into a half a double in a nice neighborhood. So that was, 6th grade was fun for me. That was probably in school, that was probably one of my best years. I enjoyed school. I applied myself. I was doing good. But I still had like stuff up with myself that I wasn't dealing with. You know what I mean? I guess from childhood trauma and stuff, that I wasn't dealing with. But
just don't talk about it.
Yeah, yep. And then 7th grade, it started getting a little different. And I remember even when I was young, in 6th grade, I remember I found a gun in the park. It was a little 22. I found it. It was in a camera bag, and I kept it. And then my mom caught me with it, and I used to take it everywhere with me. It was a little 22. Excuse me, it was a 380. It was a silver 380 revolver, and I used to take it with me everywhere I used to go. And I had it in that little camera bag. And then my mom caught me with it one day. And she caught me. I was coming back from the park from playing basketball. I used to play a lot of basketball when I was young. And she was like, yo, why you keep on carrying that around with you? And I said, no, I just found it. I told her I just found it. She's like, and then she was like, but I seen you carrying that bag. I said, no, well, the bag I just told her I had some baseball cards in it, but she seen the gun. And I remember she called the cops. And my story to my mom was, I just found it. And I didn't know what I was doing with a gun,
She called the cops on you?
Because I told her I found it. So she was like, she called the cops to turn the gun in. You know what I mean? I don't think she believed me fully, but it was a kid just finding a gun in the park. It was loaded, all that shit, so thank God that nothing bad happened to her. I didn't hurt myself or hurt somebody else, because I used to show it to, to my friends and stuff. And that was, but I remember having that gun, and even at that age, feeling like so powerful. You know what I mean? Because I had a gun.
Yeah, that does it.
And anybody that knows that, anybody that's ever carried a gun, know the second you get that gun in your hand, you feel absolutely invincible. And I noticed that as a fucking 11, 12-year-old kid at that age. Yeah.
So you started really like getting it in around that time? Like street life? Because there was a transition where I started getting, and you were way ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Than me, and I'm talking about 8th grade, 7th grade.
I would say 7th grade probably, because 6th grade.
Making trips to New York. Doing shit like that.
Yeah. 6th grade. You know what I did though? In 6th grade, I used to extort the rich kids. And off camera, I'll tell you, I don't want to say their names on here, but the rich kids in school.
I already got a couple.
Yeah, I used to extort them. And I didn't know it was extortion at the time. I used to just tell them, yo, I need some money. I don't get some money, and be like, yo, this is going to happen, or I'll protect you. And there was nothing to protect nobody from, you know what I mean? But that's what I used to tell them. I'll protect you, if you give me some money. And that ended up transferring on to when I went to prison. But I used to do that stuff. And that was a kid just to have money, $30 here. Because to me, $30 was a big deal. But to some of these kids, $30 was nothing. Their parents leave that stuff laying around. So I used to do that a lot. And I used to do that on a normal basis. That was weekly basis. I used to be like extorting kids. And because I always had a love for money. I was very materialistic as a young kid and always wanted money. So, yeah. And then that led to me in 7th grade. I remember, then I would start selling weed, and I used to go to my grandmother's house for the summer in New York, and there was a weed spot right down the block. So I used to, my grandmother, she owned a church and owned buildings. So she used to pay me $50 a day to work for her. So I'd be like cleaning up the buildings, doing some painting, stuff like that. And I'd save up all my money. And then right before I get ready to come back to New York, I'd go buy a whole bunch of weed and bring it back with me. And come back, make some money, you know what I mean? And that was like my first real interaction with selling drugs on my own. Not drugs that I found, not drugs that somebody gave to me. Actually going through the motions, acquiring the money, going to buy the drugs, repackaging it, selling it, reing up and all that stuff. And that was, I'd say 6th grade going into 7th grade. And then just continued from there. And then I always, after that, I sort of had my own money. And, learned that I was able to make money quickly.
So when was the first time you got hemmed up doing that?
8th grade. I was probably 13 years old. My mom, it was in the summertime. My mom went to a rehab. She was in rehab. She was addicted to heroin at the time. So she went to a rehab, and my sister was taking care of us, my older sister. And I remember she found I was smoking. My family knew. And I had started, ripping and running in the streets a little bit. But she found some weed that I had stashed in my house. I might have had like a 1/4 ounce, and it was 2 different packages though. I remember because it was either 2 different kinds of weed, or one I was selling and one I was smoking. I don't remember what it was, but I had 2 different like 1/4 ounces, and and she found them and called my grandmother, and my grandmother was like, call the cops. And then my sister, she came, she was talking to me, and then the cops ended up getting called. I got put on probation. And
your sister called the cops?
I think my grandmother called the cops, because I remember my sister didn't want to call the cops.
It was already too late.
Yeah, but she had let my grandmother know. Mm-hmm. And my grandmother, she was an older woman, church lady. She didn't play that shit. Mm-hmm. So,
that was your first being in the system type shit?
That was my first
juvenile,
like, real arrest, I would say. I had, little shit before that, like underage drinking, driving without a license, little shit like that. But that was my first thing where I had to go to court. Everything else was like, you handle it with a fine, or they didn't do nothing because I was too young. That was the first time that I had to go to court, and I was put on probation for that. And then that's when, once I got put on probation, all the little stuff I was doing, I could no longer do. Staying out for a couple days at a time, I couldn't do that shit on probation. Probation was, they were strict. Like, they would check up on you. It was juvenile probation, juvenile courts. So they would check up. And especially they knew that my house wasn't the best home life. So they would check up even more. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Before you move off to school, what was your favorite subject in school? What did you like?
Math.
Math?
Math. I like math because I always equated everything to money. But I also like science, like history, all that stuff. The only thing I didn't like was English. Because I didn't.
Communication arts.
I didn't know none of that shit. Yeah. Nouns and pronouns. I still don't know what that stuff is. But I love to learn. I love to learn. And even now, I love to learn even more. Because I know now how important knowledge is.
Yeah. So when was the first time you went to some type of juvie or some type of lockup? What's the circumstances around that?
Damn, I don't remember what it was for.
Because I remember you went to some...
Yeah. I went...
Bellefonte?
Yeah. Bellefonte was the first place I went to. That was...
I never went there. How old were you when you went there?
I was young. I had to be...
8th grade?
Yeah. 12 years old, 13 years old. And I went there. And I remember that shit sucked. It was a place where... it was like a juvenile prison. There's a... you go to your cell a lot. When you go in your cell, they take away everything, your sneakers, your belt, all that type of stuff for suicide reasons. And then you'd stay in your room. You'd come out, they'd have activities that you do. You go to school, they had school, But that shit sucked. I didn't like it at all.
You were there?
I remember it was cold. I was there a couple times. I think the longest time I might have been there was like 3 months.
3 months straight?
Yeah, because they would... Usually you go there, and then you go to court, and they send you home. And then after I was there a couple times, the judge was like, all right, leave him there, and we'll just deal with his court from here. And I remember it used to be freezing there. It used to be cold as shit in there. And the food was... I didn't like the food, nothing.
But how was it? You with the other kids and shit.
The other kids, it was all right. You didn't really have interaction too much. Like, you couldn't talk. You couldn't talk to the other kids. The only time you could talk to kids is when staff was present. It was extremely secure.
In your room the whole time?
You was a room by yourself.
Is 23 in one lockup type shit?
No. It was probably...
Like, this seems like, yo, you can't talk to nobody for 3 months?
You can't talk to nobody.
That's some solitary shit. You know what I mean?
You can't talk to nobody unless staff is present. You couldn't talk to nobody. Like, you had to be playing a game like Uno or cards, or you couldn't talk to... Like, you're sitting out there, you couldn't talk to anybody. You weren't allowed. And they said that was because they would have a lot of problems with kids coming up with ideas. Yo, let's fucking jump on this staff. So they wouldn't allow you to talk. Unless staff was present, you couldn't talk. If you got caught talking, you'd have to go back to your cell. And nobody wanted to do that because you only got, like, unscheduled time. You only had like 3 or 4 hours out of your cell at a time. So I was there. I went to boot camps. I went to boot camps where you have to run and do push-ups. One where you had to stay in the woods 28 days straight. It was just camping in the woods.
I remember that.
You never went inside except for your 15th day to take a shower. They give you a shower every 2 weeks. One your 15th day and one your last day there when you're leaving. And then you had to run 10 miles in under 2 hours to graduate. But which don't sound bad for a kid, but you got to do it with that big ass backpack on and boots, and you had to sleep outside. Everything was outside. That was different because that you could talk. So obviously, if you could talk and you're young, you're gonna 9 times out of 10 you're gonna have issues with people, especially being young because everybody thinks they're so tough. And you had kids from all over.
That shit sounds rough.
That shit sucked, and it was in the middle of winter. And then you had to do it's called a solo mission, where they put you by yourself in a tent for 2 days, and you had to...
What the fuck?
You had to make your own tent, everything. You had to make your own fire. It was a dope experience now. At the time, I couldn't stand it.
2 days, that sounds
2 days, 48 hours. Yep. You had to make... And all you ate the whole time you was there was peanut butter and jelly. And then we hiked to West Virginia. And then we went to West Virginia. West Virginia has like one of the biggest... I'd say it's like rappelling or something on the East Coast. I forgot exactly what it was. And you rappel down the mountain.
You graduated though?
Graduated. Yeah, I did good in that. Because it was more, that was more like physical stuff.
Yeah.
And I was extremely athletic when I was young, and so all that stuff was good. And I liked challenges, so that was good. And the staff knew how to interact with the kids there. They knew how to interact. You know, they see kids that, if I thought I was bad, they seen kids that was 10 times worse. So it was all right there. Then I did another secure lockup that I was at for like 9 months in Danville. It's called North Central Secure, I believe.
Yeah, it got shut down, I think.
It's still open. One of my customers just came in that works there. The one in Shamokin got shut down.
I was in jail when they had the riot over there, and the fucking kids fucking held the girls hostage and everything.
That shit was crazy. The one it was like a jail. It was like an old castle, and it reminded me of the county jail, and that
North Central?
The one in Danville.
I think it was North Central.
North Central Secure, it was called. Yeah. And the other one was called like Northern Central or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was different because that was kids. There was kids there up to 21 years old.
They should be in jail.
Yeah, there was kids up there up to 21 years old. So you know, that was different. You're around bigger kids. You're around kids that look like adults. You know, and then and I would have issues there because I was always a small kid, I think, but I had an attitude. And you couldn't tell me I was small and, you know, anything like that. And then, like, throughout the course of that, I started getting in trouble because my mom and my sister's father, they had split up. So I think, they had split up. So I think
you a little bit of structure.
Exactly. He gave me structure, you know, and he gave me incentive too. You know, he gave me like allowance, stuff like that, stuff to work forward to that I realize now is important for kids. You know, goals to obtain and stuff like that. And he gave me he was a role model. You know, he was a father figure. He was a father. You know, so that was important.
So when he left, basically shit was on.
Yeah, then it was yard out.
Nobody was telling you nothing.
It was yard out, and especially because my mom was in rehab a lot. She'd go back and forth to rehab. So my sister was trying to care for me, and that was yard out. I wasn't listening to nothing she was saying.
The other little sister.
Yeah. Yep. There was 3 of us in the house at that time.
Oh, and Marissa.
And Marissa. Yep. So it was yard out.
4 of you guys.
Yeah. Well, besides my sister.
Yeah.
And my sister's only 6 years older than me, so you know I'm not listening to her.
I grew up quick too.
Exactly. Yeah, and she'd been taking care of us since grade school. My sister, you know. And then once again in middle school, I had a fight with the gym teacher behind chewing some gum. He was like, "Take your gum out," and I felt.
Maroney, who?
Yeah,
No. Robson.
Maroney.
That's 6th grade.
It's the middle school.
Yeah,
Mr. Maroney.
Mr.
Yep.
Maroney.
He was like, "Take the gum out of your mouth," and he was real aggressive too. And he would always be yelling at people and stuff like that. And it was just one of those days I wasn't trying to hear it. I was like, nope. So he grabbed me by the shirt and pushed me like outside those doors that used to be on the side.
Yeah.
Spit the gum out. And when he pushed me outside the doors, once again, like I'd try to fight with him, but I'm a kid. He's a grown man. So I just remember when he grabbed my face like this and was like, spit the gum out. And I spit it in his face. And then he pushed me, like he threw me on the wall, and then I started trying to fight with him, and I remember I hit him, and then he didn't like punch me with a closed fist, but I remember him like gripping me up, you know what I mean, throwing me around. He wouldn't strike me with a closed fist, I don't think, but he
got physical.
Yeah, definitely. You know what I mean? He threw me around like I had bruises on me from the wall.
You got kicked out of school for that?
Yeah. They wanted they were trying to.
Because you can't go back to this class after that shit.
I did though. I did. Oh, and then after that had happened, I went to the locker room and put some more gum in my mouth and walked past him and like said something to him, and I had gum in my mouth. And I just remember I was like, damn, I was just inviting trouble. But I went back to school. I got suspended for a couple days, but he got in trouble too. He got suspended from school. He got suspended because he wasn't supposed to do that shit. And I had bruises. I had a bruise on my face and I had bruises on my body. That he wasn't. I remember my mom like took me to see a lawyer and stuff like that. And yeah.
Yeah, that shit can't happen nowadays.
Yeah, you can't do that shit now. Now fucking school be shut down. But it was a different,
But nobody could tell you what to do at that time.
Absolutely. Yep. And for me, I felt like he already put his hands on me, so I was like, what's the worst that's gonna happen? You already put your hands on me, so what, you gonna do it again? You know what I mean? So that's why I was like,
all those lockup, all that juvenile shit that you went through, all that getting in trouble and all that shit. Could anything have fixed you at that time? Is there anything you think you needed or?
No, I don't believe so. Because there was, even later on in my life, because the only thing that started, I had a lot of anger in me.
So you needed a way to release that? Yeah,
once I started going to see a therapist, that's when things started to change for me. That's
when you
were
were already older.
I was 35 years old. For the first time I started speaking about stuff that started happening, stuff that...
Shit that bothered you.
Yeah, I was 35 years old. So if I would have talked about that shit years earlier, I would have probably saved myself a lot of time in prison and all that stuff. But it just, and sometimes people will ask me, they'll be like, would you take it back? Every day is different, you know what I mean? Right now, I say, no, I wouldn't take it back. The only thing I'd take back is when I hurt people. But later on, I might be like, I'd take it all back, Because I feel like I wasted a lot of potential that I had that now I'm just starting to harness and starting to put to use. So I could imagine what I could have done if I would have had a 20-year head start,
Yeah, we had a conversation about this before. Like,
Yeah.
but would you still be the same person? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I really feel like,
Yeah.
like the shit that you've been through made you the fucking,
Yeah.
the diamond that you are. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But you needed to get all roughed up and
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah,
And I agree with that too. That that our adversity builds character in us, and pressure is either going to do two things. It's either going to bust pipes or it's going to make diamonds, and it's up to us to decide that. Do you want to be a bust pipe or you want to be a diamond? You know what I mean?
Mm.
So it's up to us to decide that, you know. And during that time, like, I didn't really use drugs. I would smoke weed, you know what I mean, socially and stuff like that, and drank a little, but that was about it.
When was the first time you started using other drugs? Was it before you juvenile into adult sentence, or?
7th grade, 7th to 8th grade, I had a cousin, and she had got a lawsuit, a lot of money. And then I had another, he was almost like a cousin, where my uncle, the one that was married, his name is Chino. He was like real bad addicted to coke. So he was doing coke a lot. So I was like, I want to try it. You know what I mean? And that was the first. I tried it twice, and I didn't like it. I was like, not for me. You know what I mean? It made me hyper. I'm not the type of person that likes to be hyper, anything like that. And I just remembered he was older, so I looked up to him at the time. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I remember he used to put like coke in his cigarettes and smoke it and sniff it, and I was like, you know, I didn't know what was going on with that, but I was like, let me see what it's like, and I tried it, but it wasn't for me. I didn't like that, and that was
You're never big into smoking weed either.
No, I didn't like the way that weed made me feel, because it made me, I felt like I wasn't, like my senses were dulled. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't something I liked. It would make me like sluggish, and it wasn't my thing. I would do it socially, you know, to fit in. If everybody's smoking a blunt, I'd smoke a blunt. But it wasn't something I would do and then want to go hang out. You know, that wasn't me.
So you want to get into your juvenile shit?
It's already half an hour. We'll say that for part 3. All right.
We'll do that.
So I'm gonna end this here. Part 2, part 3. We'll get into where I start getting in trouble and my juvenile stuff. Where a lot of stuff started going wrong for me. So I thank you guys once again. I appreciate you guys for listening, for the support. I thank you guys a lot. And this actually, it makes me feel good talking about it. You know what I mean? Like sort of opening up about it and stuff like that. Because it's one thing talking to a therapist, but it's another thing talking to other people and knowing other people are going to see it and get some feedback. So I think it's healthy. And I'd advise somebody else to do it also.
Ask questions in the comments.
Absolutely. Hit those comments. Ask questions. If there's anything specific you want me to touch on, don't hesitate. I don't, you know what I mean? I'm pretty much an open book, because I realize now that this stuff helps me to talk about it. Not only it helps me, but I'm sure it helps somebody else.
Helps the next person.
Yeah, so I'm open. So I thank you guys, and next video, probably next week, we'll start touching on my juvenile years, like my teenage years, where things started going wrong. So thank you. Have a good day. See you next time.